Namaskar, good morning. This is Professor Y.K. Gupta, former Dean and Head of Department of Pharmacology, All India Institute Medical Sciences, talking to you on salient features of New Drug Clinical Trial Rule 2019. And we will be highlighting what is new in this. I will be talking to you on the salient features through this presentation, which has been prepared in consultation with CDSCO. The primary learning objective of this nearly 1 hour session would be A. To gain better understanding of New Drug and Clinical Trial Rule 2019 and what has been its impact on the new drug discovery process and medicine safety in general, and also to gather an insight to an important salient features, especially what are the new features which did not exist earlier in this rule, and also to get clarity in some important areas. To begin with, the important thing is what is new drug, and if you just see the difference for in the new drugs is for humans earlier it was called as a regulation and schedule Y, but now schedule Y is a non-entity as far as for human is concerned, which is replaced by New Drug and Clinical Trial Rule 2019. However, for veterinary use still the earlier regulations and schedule Y is in place. Important thing to remember, which even now very senior regulators, teachers, students, industry people make a mistake that they still say that this is a schedule Y. We remember, keep this in mind that schedule Y has been replaced by New Drug and Clinical Trial Rules 2019. So, do not call a schedule Y in present context. Now, it is clearly defined what is new chemical entity. This is any substance which is not approved as drug in any country, that is a NCE, and for the first time proposed to be developed as new drug. Clearly, any drug which is not any substance mean it can be a molecule or it can be molecules, it can be anything which gives a delivery, but which comes into the definition and is being for the first time, that is important. The another term which is often used is investigational new drug, IND. The old definition was new chemical entity or a product having therapeutic indication, but which has never been tested earlier on human being. However, if you just see the red part here, that is the new definition, it says new chemical or biological entity or substance that has not been approved for marketing as a drug in any country. Take home message is any country remains the same. Not approved for marketing is an important thing, but the most important thing is new chemical or biological entity or substance. Now, this will means it includes all biosimilars, it includes all other substances which have a drug or which has not approved in any country. The definition of new drug, there is an addition that will always be considered a new drug, means a modified or sustained release form of a drug or a novel drug delivery system. This has been added. Now, modified drug or sustained release or novel drug delivery system, and a clause 5 has been added where vaccine and recombinant derived product, monoclonal antibody, stem cell derived product, gene therapeutic product, xenografts which are intended to be used as a drug. So, all these things will now be called as a new drug. Important is any vaccine which is introduced and produced by a person, a place or different technology will be called as a new drug, and this, if you just see that this will always be remaining as a new drug. Now, investigational product. What is the investigational product? Investigational product is the pharmaceutical formulation of an active ingredient, but this is also placebo, which is being tested for the purpose. In new drug, for the first time we have added the definition of orphan drug, which was not defined earlier, and the orphan drug has been defined as a drug intended to treat a condition which affects less than 5 lakh person in India. There was no uniformity of definition of orphan drug in literature, different people have used. In India, for this rule, we have defined as a drug intended to treat less than 5. And if you just see the red part, the ICMR rare disease is that which is less than 1 patient per 2,500 population. And if you convert this to our population of the country today, nearly the same ratio will lead to 5 lakhs in India. One may argue that 5 lakhs may be more or it may become more if the population increases, then we are open to change this at a later date. But as on date, this is a 5 lakhs person, less than that. Advantage or to promote the drug discovery in orphan drug, there is no fee for clinical trial. Also, there is a provision of accelerated or expedited review process. An example, it will seem like bedaquiline, which was given permission even after phase 2 data, because this was required for the patient in India for a problem which is a national problem, that is a multi-drug resistant or resistant tuberculosis. Placebo has been defined now is that an inactive substance visually identical in appearance to a drug being tested in clinical trial. We are still debating, and this will be included maybe in the next time, because some placebo can be identical, has to be identical in taste, particularly when you are using liquid or oral substance, or it may have a fragrance for topical application particularly, and therefore, making placebo, which is a liquid for oral preparation, which can give you a taste, that whether you use a taste masking agent or if it has a specific fragrance, then masking agent for fragrance has to be added, though this has not been in the has been defined in the regulation, but the procedure has to be there for taking care of these two things as well. This has been a new addition. What is the post trial access of IND drugs or new drug? After the trial is over, it is ethically required and now regulatory requirement that the post trial drug should be available. This is, we have provided the guidelines that this is to be given on the recommendation of the investigator. Only when then there is no alternative therapy available to the patient, only then the person can have the post trial access. In this case, the important thing is there is no liability to sponsor for post trial access, and for that the patient has to give a specific undertaking in writing that he is asking this and the doctor or the investigator is recommending this. There is no liability of the company, and after approval by ethics committee this can be done. This is important to know that a post trial access, the cost is 0 to the patient, and this is to be provided free of cost by sponsor. Now, the question which is yet to be settled, for how long, particularly in cases like multiple sclerosis, MS, or refractory hypertension. Suppose there is a drug when the patient is not responding to any drug, but this is he has been termed as a refractory hypertension, or any other condition which requires a long term. The question is, for how long? Should it be as per recommendation of ethics committee? It should be on the regulator or the investigator. And important issue which needs to be deliberated, that who will report the safety of these drugs and who and how. But this is also the responsibility of the investigator who is recommending. So, minimum reporting of this is also important. We have now biomedical and health research regulations. This is called as a BHR, regulations for biomedical and health research. There was no such regulation earlier. Now, there is a separate chapter, chapter 4 for regulation of BHR, and this will be effective after 180 days. That means, from the September 19 later, and BHR to be conducted in accordance with National Ethics Guideline for Biomedical and Health Research involving human participants by ICMR. For BHR, or say regulations of biomedical and health research, ethics committee is required to be registered with Department of Health Research, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and this deals with non-regulatory studies, and ethics committee to supervise the study. The SAE, serious adverse events, and compensation dealt by ethics committee as per BHR guidelines. For example, biomedical health research will take care of studies such as in vitro diagnostics, IVDs, performing testing of research. There is a new surgical intervention. For example, there is a assisted reproductive technology, public health survey, maybe epidemiological studies. Observational and non-interventional study of a drug which is not a new drug. However, it is advisable that when you are doing observational or non-interventional study, it is advisable that you submit such protocol to CDSCO and gets a confirmation from that. Otherwise, this is acceptable. Now, ethics committee for clinical trial, there are some changes. This deals with the regulatory clinical trial as well as academic clinical trial and also BA/BE studies. The constitution is now changed that it should have a minimum 50% members from outside. Remember, minimum 50% members from outside. SAE timeline, reporting, causality, compensation, CT rules is the same which was earlier. Compensation order which was there earlier remains the same, but now this has become an order by regulatory process. For clinical trial, compensation for academic clinical trial and other ethical issues would be as per National Ethical Guidelines for Biomedical and Health Research involving human participants, which is given in the ICMR booklet. And this has to be registered with CDSCO. So, ethics committee for clinical trial, it has to be registered with CDSCO. It will give approval for clinical trial as well as regulatory clinical trial as well as academic clinical trial. It can also give for BA/BE studies. It should have minimum 50% members from outside. The change in the regulatory framework is the registration for ethics committee is valid for 5 years. Earlier it was 3 years, and this will reduce the administrative work for the institute and also the administrative work of Central Licensing Authority. Members of the ethics committee, it is now mandatory that they should be trained on rules and good clinical practice GCP to safeguard the rights, safety and well-being of the subjects, and if not trained, the Central Licensing Authority or the ethics committee chairman, this ethics committee or the member can be disqualified, and this creates a challenge. Challenge means a nationwide training how to organize, and that is what we are trying to do, that organizing a training mechanism by e-learning offered by CDSA or the face-to-face training program nationwide, and we are looking for the modalities how we can fan out across the country. The issue of compensation in case of injury in academic trial or where the trial are governed by biomedical health research is as per National Ethics Guideline for Biomedical Research involving human participant. In academic trial also, ethics committee is responsible for deciding relatedness of SAE. If you understand, in a regulatory trial, the ethics committee decides SAE, but final decision would be by an apex committee set up by regulator. In academic trial, ethics committee should recommend appropriate compensation. This is written as appropriate. So, the decision of fixing the amount of the compensation largely depends upon the ethics committee. It is the responsibility of the host institution to provide compensation and to cover for insurance. This is important thing. It is not that the ethics committee will recommend to the regulator who will order compensation to the industry. In academic clinical trial, the institution has to make arrangement either through a pool or through the insurance coverage. Now, there is a need today for developing the guidelines for determining the quantum of compensation in academic trial. In absence of that, the clinical trial, academic trial, majority of the ethics committee use the compensation regulation process, which is followed by the regulatory clinical trial also. There are now require clarity on the ethics committee. One is called as the independent ethics committee. Independent ethics committee, in addition to the institutional ethics committee, can approve or can accord approval of clinical trial protocol if it is constituted in accordance with Rule 7, which gives the constitution. If it is located in the same city or within 50 kilometers of radius of clinical trial site, that means to ensure the quick accessibility of the ethics committee members to the clinical trial site, the 50 kilometer is a notional and should not be taken as that 51 kilometer or 49 kilometer will be the border area. And this should take the responsibility of the patient right, safety and well-being. SAE reporting is as per timeline of the regulatory trial. Now, to take home messages, independent ethics committee were earlier only permitted to do BA/BE studies, but now if the independent ethics committee is trained, competent, formed as per Rule 7, they can accord permission of the trial site, provided they are within 50 kilometers. There are two important things. One is the ethics committee, which is approving for biomedical health research as per, and it is also approving clinical trial, and it is also approving BA/BE studies. The question would be where they should get registered. If you remember, for doing a clinical trial, which is a regulatory clinical trial, we mentioned that they have to be registered with CDSCO, whereas for BHR, for an academic clinical trial, they have to be registered with the Department of Health Research. Now, if they are doing both, then they have to be registered at both the places, in Ministry of Health, Health Research as well as in CDSCO. There are some new timelines for applications of new drug and IND, which has been now in place. That is, in case of clinical trial, as part of discovery and research and manufacture in India, if this is to primarily promote clinical trial drug discovery for India by Indian industry. In this case, permission rejection query must be given by the regulator within 30 days. If in 30 days the applicant of new drug application or IND is not received response, it will be deemed as approved, which is an important challenging development. However, the applicant has to intimate CLA for initiation. That means, even after 30 days, response is not received from CLA, Central Licensing Authority, will be deemed as approved, but when you enroll the first subject, it has to be informed. For other applications for clinical trial or new drugs, permission rejection or query for 90 days. If the drug is developed outside the country, then the time period is 90 days, and if you do not receive the response, it is not deemed to be approved. So, you have to wait for the response. The primary aim is to promote clinical research and drug development in India. Now, for academic clinical trial, the clinical trial on approved drug is intended solely for academic research purpose, that is called as an academic. In this case, permission for Central Licensing Authority is not required, and this is usually for new indication, maybe for new route, or for new dose or dosage form. This will become academic. The important thing is the observation cannot be submitted for or not meant for submission to central licensing authority and not for promotional purpose. An ethics committee only can approve it. Compensation here will be as per national guidelines of ICMR, but whenever there is a doubt, you must inform central licensing authority. So, that is a new development of academic clinical trial. The primary intent is that this is to identify the proof of concept establishing and not for bringing new drug into the market. Ethics committee approval for clinical trial protocol. The clinical trial at each site shall be initiated after approval by ethics committee of that site. That means, each ethics committee has to give approval. We are now discussing, can there be a mechanism of central ethics committee for trial which are multi-centric, but there is a common protocol. But logistics and who will be the competent authority, this is still being worked out. So, this is not part of the regulatory process, but this is what we would like to have your feedback on this, and we are working on that, and the consensus has yet to be evolved. Where trial site is an institute does not have its own ethics committee. Many times the trial site may not have its own ethics committee. The question is, who can accord approval? Ethics committee of another site can approve now, provided it owns the responsibility of safety and any consequences, and it can be done by independent ethics committee also, provided it is constituted as per rule 7, and as I mentioned earlier, located in the same city within 50 kilometers radius and responsible for safety and well-being. When an applicant gets approval for proposal from EC, that the applicant shall inform CLA within 15 working days. This is a new change. When ethics committee rejects a proposal and the applicant submits application to other EC, which happens that I have submitted proposal to one ethics committee, it rejects, and because of some reasons I submit it to another ethics committee, but when you do so, you have to submit the application and then you have to must submit the details of rejection to central licensing authority, and that is primarily because that you do not do window shopping, that this has rejected. So, let us try on this shop this ethics committee and may get approved. So, when you approach other ethics committees, it is important that you give the reasons for the rejection. A new development in this rule is import of unapproved new drug, the drug which has not been approved in India. In that case, the medical officer of as on date only government hospital may import it and approved for marketing in country of origin, that is it has to be, and the patient is suffering from life threatening disease, disease causing serious permanent disability or an unmet need. So, if a patient has suffering from the life threatening disease, unmet need and causing serious illness, in that case if the medical officer or the indenting person from the government hospital thinks that this drug will be useful, there is a provision to import such unapproved new drug. Also, there is a provision now for manufacturing on unapproved drug which is under clinical trial. but not approved otherwise. For treatment of patient from serious life-threatening disease, no satisfactory therapy available in the country can be approved for manufacturing limited quantity, not more than 100. Today we are also discussing, but this is not part of the rule, that compassionate use or what is called as a pre-approval access of investigational drug in India. The drug which has not been approved in any country, including India, how and under what provision, with what guidelines this drug can be made available to the patient in India. This is no rule for this, and a white paper on this is being developed, but soon this may find acceptance in the regulatory process. This is called as an compassionate use, and in this we need your suggestions and views. What would be the informed consent in this, whether this should be reviewed by ethics committee and what points ethics committee will review, individual patient if it is required or maybe few patients require, whether the drug which is under phase 1, phase 2 or phase 3 in any part of the world, but is not approved anywhere, how this can be indented and who pays the cost. We have in couple of meetings have of one opinion that the patient should not pay. There must be a mechanism for SAE or AE reporting, and this cannot be published because this has not been the research mode, and this should not also be part of the clinical trial dossier submission. There are now provision of clinical trial waivers in some situation. That is, a clinical trial in India may not be required in case if the drug is approved and marketed in countries specified under the rules, and these countries are primarily the well regulated countries. And therefore, this has not been named because the list can increase when the regulator thinks that these are the main regulatory countries, but as on date it is USA, UK, Japan, and no major unexpected serious events have been reported. In that case, the trial can be waived off, or there is a global clinical trial in which India is a part, and there is no evidence that there is a difference of enzyme or gene involved in metabolism which affect the PK/PD safety and efficacy of the new drug. So, if there is an unmet need, if there is a serious concern, if there is a drug which is approved outside and there is no reason to believe that there is a genetic difference, then case by case examination, the clinical trial waiver can be considered by the regulator. Phase 4 CT is required for such waivers. However, the same may be relaxed under following condition: indicated in life threatening or serious special events for unmet need like tuberculosis, hepatitis, H1N1, dengue, malaria, HIV and rare disease, and drugs for orphan disease. There is now process of accelerated approval to a new drug, that is marketing approval based on phase 2 clinical trial data if remarkable efficacy observed in phase 2 clinical trial, then there is a reason to have an accelerated process. For serious and life threatening conditions or disease, unmet medical needs, when there is no alternative treatment available and consideration taking into account severity, rarity or prevalence, there can be accelerated approval process. surrogate endpoints shall be considered which are reasonably likely to predict clinical benefit. In many cases, you have no certain endpoints. In that case, surrogate endpoints can be considered. Expert committee is now included in CT rules. You may be going through SEC committees, many SEC committees, which is called a subject expert committee. Now, these expert committees is now has been defined in rule. Earlier, this was an administrative decision only. What we are doing now also, the SEC review is now legal and not just an administrative process. SEC guidelines document under, we are preparing a guideline document and members are being trained and time bound review of the process. This is the, all these red are the agenda which is being worked upon. Fees for for pre-submission meeting now, there is a provision of pre-IND submission meeting, which was not earlier, and this guideline, detailed guidelines for this have been worked out, and the fee have to pay to 5 lakh rupees, and there will be an expert or a body of expert regulator will meet the person who is pre-IND meeting seeker, pre-submission, and will provide the guidance. There is also provision of having a post-submission meeting, and the fee is 50,000. To promote research by small scale industry and academic research, the fees is 50%, and for the government and autonomous institution, there is no fee. So, there is a reason to smile by the academic institution that the government has waived off complete fee for academic institution to promote research in India. Compensation of clinical trial, there is no change. However, now this formula which we introduced much earlier is now a regulatory status. Some change or ease has been there in animal toxicology requirement, and that is flexibility given to adopt between general guidance under rules or ICH, and studies may be planned, designed and conducted as per ICH, which will be acceptable. And the important thing is to promote safe ethical environment of new drugs, which is in accordance with rule of 3R, reduce number of animals as much as possible, wherever possible, refine your technology, so that with a minimum experimental process you give maximum information, replace the animal wherever possible with the non-animal, means in vitro or in silico models, and therefore, government is also promoting replacement of animals with other alternatives for which it require validation process. Stability data, there is now clarity on stability data. If you just see, the earlier it was 6 months accelerated data, and there was a real time data was 12 months. But now, the accelerated, the relative humidity and the temp is now 75%, which is slightly more, and the significant change is that from 6 or 12 months. So, the real time and the accelerated time, that means even if you do the real time for 6 months, it is acceptable. And so, this is the difference in requirement of the safety data. Post marketing safety assessment, detailed guidelines in the 5th schedule. Post marketing safety assessment may be carried out in the different ways, that is phase 4. Post marketing trial is that DCGI directs that, and as per approved protocol by Central Licensing Authority, and all regulations of clinical trial guidelines compensation will apply, and this is called as a phase 4 trial. The second thing is post marketing surveillance or observational or non-interventional study for active surveillance. That is, there is a regulatory provision of CT of new drug, this is not available, not applicable. That means no compensation and the new drug supplied may not be free. So, the clarity is now phase 4 trial where there is a DCGI direction to do it. There is a protocol which has been approved. In this case, all rules of clinical trial will follow, including compensation, and the drugs have to be free of cost. Whereas, another category is the post marketing surveillance study, where this is not a regulator directed, no protocol approval required, and in this case the drug is also not free. The third is what you conventionally say or know is the PSUR. That is what you do every 6 months for 2 years and for every year for next 2 years, that means for 4 years. Now, the post marketing surveillance study or observational or non-interventional study for active surveillance, a non-interventional observational study means a study in which the investigator does not assign the participants any specific intervention or treatment. That is an observation, it does not assign. Whatever the physician has prescribed, that is what it is. Such study of a new drug may be conducted under approved conditions and its use under protocol approved by CLA. Regulatory provisions and guidance applicable for clinical trial of a new drug are not applicable and the new drug supplied may not be free in this case. So, PSUR as part of PMS, submission to PSUR is mandatory for drug for 4 years and in essence for first 2 years every 6 months and next 2 years every year. When the submitted document found fake, misleading or fabricated, earlier it was only the data was rejected, but now there is an opportunity to show cause if found guilty. Applicant may also be debarred by CLA for period as they deem fit. So, this is now slightly stricter. Now, in this I would just like to add few things, that what are the points which you will like to highlight. A, starting from the beginning, the clinical trial rules are to simplify the regulatory process. B, it has become more clarity. C, the compensation for academic trial and for clinical trial for regulatory purpose have been defined, the timelines have been defined. So, this is the purpose of this. I hope that you have understood the salient features of clinical trial rules, which have been now called as the Clinical Trial Rules 2019. Thank you very much. We expect some feedback from you. We will be happy to answer questions through email or interactive forum. Thank you.